ladies and gentlemen. I hope everybody remains awake after heavy lunch and beverages. But believe me, I promise I'm gonna make this session very, very interactive. I'm not gonna run a typical presentation for you, and I would like to make this discussion in a manner for a key takeaway and real technology use cases. So since morning, we have been discussing excellent thought process around the workplace, the people aspect of it, the culture aspect of it, behavioral, hybrid, and whatnot. And now there is a shift around it, that how technology is going to help in all of this, because ultimately, while we are talking about moving to hybrid workplaces, Alana, I'm sorry, I called your name right? Alana, talked about creating an excellent experience for the employees while they are coming to office. And they should be willing to come to office rather than mandating them or penalizing them for not coming to office, because it should be pull rather than push. And that's where we will see that how technology is gonna help. So I would like to start with few of the personas, typically how we look at the workplace. So this is, and I'm just looking at some of the high-level use cases. I really don't have to touch everything, because since morning we have touched hundreds of use cases across the areas in and around the workplaces. So I'm just looking at John, who was like, want to connect all the brainstorming on the designing architecture, and that's where they're having a team collaboration, virtual meeting rooms that was arranged using this. Now he's looking for some exhilarating experience in the team meetings. Then there is Mia, who's a news reporter who is sitting in the workplace thinking of that there's some reporting in the hazardous area. How would I is the workplace very safe for me, and how do I make the use of technology to work on it? Another person, Tom, sitting in the workplace area, very few people are there, and he's thinking of, you know what, the lights are on, barely anybody in the work office. How do I make the intelligent admin decisions to optimize the usage of the energy, optimization of the operations across that. Then there's another one which is like different suitcase of Maria. Maria is a scientist looking at combining thousands of research documents, processing and generating the summaries out of it. How do we make sure that she's more productive at the workplace? So these are some of the wide area use cases which we are looking at, and let's look at how technology can help here. Now, when I talked about three major personas, the capability mapping which has been driven by these personas, if you look at, somebody is talking about that, across the workplace, I need one-stop solution which can help me automating end-to-end facility management, so that one, I am saving on dollars by looking at to be able to predict the footfalls in the workplace. At the same time, there may be around 10 buildings an organization is owning. However, some of the buildings are very crowded, and people are, like Carl was talking about in the morning, that there are certain timings where you will see a very high footfall, typically in the mornings and the evenings. However, there are certain offices who are barely being used. Now, how do I do the intelligent forecasting to ensure that I'm optimizing on the investment on these resources and diverting those resources dynamically to the places where you have more footfall, where you're seeing the increased amount of people coming in. And definitely somebody talked about, and you talked about that I'm trying to go to the office typically on Mondays and Tuesdays, and my most of the rooms are booked, right? I'm not getting rooms for the bookings. So these kind of areas where AI can help, and very effectively, because we are, and when you talk about the underlying data, Joint Digital is doing an excellent job of collecting this data, which we can utilize to develop the machine learning algorithms, which can actually tap into the insights of, okay, for past, say, 1 month, and that's where I'm looking at out of the possible during this area where generative AI can become one of the most important enablers at the workplace, solving these problems, saying that, okay, for example, how can I make use of the huge amount of data which Joint Digital has collected to arrive at forecasting that on Mondays and Tuesdays, can I personalize some of the discussions and proactively look at the pattern of meetings and tell the employee, saying that, hey guys, you know what, we are seeing a high footfall and high crowding around this area. Why don't you try to move your meetings towards, say, Wednesdays, or this time, say, morning 10 a.m., so that it's more productive. You do not really have to come and wait for getting the meeting rooms. So these kind of AI generated insights can dynamically be converted and customized personally for, say, managers, for directors, and actually help them in optimizing their workplace experience. So that's one part of it. Now you would be wondering that, how do I personalize this? Now think of the chatbots, which are generally only used for asking some information, right? You just go and ask the information and say that, okay, this is the information available, and you can get the link or go here and talk about it. But today in generative AI, where Wipro has been doing research for last 2.5 years, and we have collaborated with few of the professors in University of South Carolina, and I'm glad you're here. So we have developed few of the large language models in generative AI, which actually helps us in doing the personalization on this data, and then proactively do the conversations around that. Okay, how should I go and define my meetings in the pattern, and are there places based on the past data I can say that, you know what, in the past this kind of meetings have been effective via virtual connects, whereas I have seen that the kind of conversations coming out of that virtual meeting and the meeting notes are getting generated. I'm sure Zoom is doing that, right? The meeting notes gets generated after the conversation, can be utilized to train the models to arrive at the insights, talking about what level of effectiveness and the outcome came out of that meeting, so that you can decide that whether a particular type of meeting is virtually effective, or you would require an in-person meeting based on the outcome. So these kind of insights can go to the leaders, the business unit heads, and they can make a right change management or right set of policies around how the discussions and the meetings can take place at the workplace. And this is just one use case I talked about. if you go further level, where we have developed a Wipro Generative AI framework, and what it does, we actually trained that on Wipro's HR data, and we were looking at having the hire to retire end-to-end solution for the employee onboarding experience till it retires, completely automated. Completely automated. Yeah, sure. Okay, sure. Okay, sure. Sure.
I'm not tracking this chart.
Okay.
And I want to, so bear with me. I'm not sure, I mean, I know how sensors learn.
Yes.
And can then predict utilization. But that's about as much as I know. So if you would kind of be more of a person for me,
No, I think that's perfectly fine, because that's where I wanted to make this session interactive. Yeah. Okay, sure. So let's take a step back, and if you look at the first place where I was talking about the workplace the occupancy planning, right? Now, how does that work? Or probably the scenario where conversational AI-based discussions are happening. For instance, I'm talking about the meeting place, right? And I'm guiding, and when I say AI. So when I'm saying I, yes. So I'm coming there. So what it does is, let's look at the amount of data which Joint Digital has collected, and they are collecting the data of which employee came into the office, which office at what time. With the badge data, with the sensors, there are a couple of technologies which captures this data. The moment you tap your badge, all of your data gets captured the moment you enters the building, right? Now, you might have been here. Now, you called the receptionist to, or maybe the app, to book the meeting. Again, your data flows in, right? It tells the application that N has requested for meeting room twice in a week. That data also gets captured. Now, because when N entered to office, when she requested for the meeting room, how long the meetings were done, and then how many times she stepped out of the office, maybe for lunch, maybe for some breaks, and then when she stepped out of the office, right? So this data keeps collecting. Now what happens is, artificial intelligence has a bit of a technology, and I'm sure I'm making sense here just for the interest of time. I'm explaining it very, very basic things here, but yes, it's important. So there are algorithms which runs on this data. Now, when algorithms continue to take this data for, say, thousands of employees' data across geography, across locations, and there are various parameters which you define that you would like to collect this data on, it starts to learn by itself. So there are various methods. Initially, we tell the algorithm that the name is N, meeting room, and other keywords we define, and based on that, it starts learning. Now, once it has learned all of that data, it actually starts coming out with insights, and it starts putting in the predictive planning process there, talking about that, okay, based on this data, I see that what's happening, right? Now, there is something called computer vision. Now, computer vision is another set of, the part of artificial intelligence. It's a technology where you processes images, and by pixel it processes various images, right? So that technology helps in looking at various kind of building layouts, how the building is being designed, what kind of sunlight is coming in there. That data also gets fed in, right? And then something called as operations research. Now, operations research is nothing but a stream of mathematics and statistics, which helps in doing the complex calculations based on the data to arrive at the forecasting planning. So this all underlying sits in, which we combinedly called as AI for the sake of simplicity, right? And then if you look at how generative AI can be sitting into the various places of these touch points in the workplace is what I'm currently showing in. And the example which I was talking about was the second one. After, the planning falls under the workplace planning, seating capacity, energy consumption and all that. Whereas when you're collaborating, once you are in the workplace, you're collaborating, right? And that's where your virtual meeting rooms, your effective and faster translations over virtual discussions, or for the matter, the notes which gets generated after the meeting. And there is a very, very interesting scenario. One of our clients talked about that. Hey guys, I know most of my meetings are virtual. Now, at times, I'm not able to join the meeting. And I would really like to catch up if there are any actions on me in that meeting. And I don't have time to sit through and listen through entire recording. What should I do? So here's what generative AI can help. Now, we all know that today the technology is that after the virtual meetings, you get the summary of the discussions. You don't really have to go through the entire translation and the recording, right? Now, out of that summary, once you have trained the entire big models on the thousands of these kind of similar summaries, it actually starts to understand that out of that summary, if somebody has called out an action with certain person's name, you can train the model to send the notification alert. Hey Shiva, you were not in the meeting, and you know what, there is an action item on you from this meeting. Why don't you look at the summary and take the action? So it goes next level, that it is proactively ensuring the virtual meetings are productive enough for the employees, and it's the employee experience that because of whatever reason the employee is not able to join those meetings or the discussions, AI is doing that work for you and making you more productive, right? And that's where it is like. Then I also picked up a couple of examples around the contract. If you look at the generative AI, what it does. How many of you know ChatGPT? Wow! So many people know Chat, and how many of you have used it? You find it interesting? Yeah? Great. So here's what, if you look at, if you are able to bring in the application of ChatGPT into business, into real industry knowledge. Now, if you look at the middle portion of the creation, right, the workplace where the jobs are very, very document heavy, where you have thousands of contracts to review and parse through. There are compliance contract documents which keeps changing based on the country's regulations, etc. every now and then, and for the matter of avoiding any kind of heavy penalties, you have to be on toes to ensure that documents are being read through and understood in different terms, right? So here generative AI, similarly as ChatGPT, what it does is the technology learns all of those 1,000 documents. You train them on that contract documents or maybe any kind of regulation documents, and then you can easily start putting into them saying that, okay, this is a 200-page document, generate a summary for me and highlight important sections which has been changed since I read last. So it actually tells you what has been changed. It gives you the directions in terms of, okay, here's the summary. So it is making your job a lot easier in terms of automating that process, and it becomes more faster, right? And in fact, for research and development area, there are huge research journals which or scientists or typical R&D people have to go through. What if a technology like ChatGPT helps me to feed in all that information in a nutshell based on my understanding and only to the questions which I want to know, right? I don't really want to read through all of that. So that's how the generative AI is coming in and creating a seamless experience for you at the workplace. Yeah. Then you look at the secure part of it. And again, this is very, very important portion of workplace safety. I'm sorry. Okay. But I'm glad, you woke up everybody, whosoever was sleeping. Thank you so much, Anne. Okay, so yeah. So then we have to really okay, so we have to really look at the safety aspect at the workplace, right? In terms of if you're looking at some of the equipments in the workplaces which you have to continue maintaining, and Carl, you might be understanding that portion where continuously you have to proactively look at the building safety, the workplaces, which you are at the same time making more smarter, more effective, more technology-led. However, there has to be a regular maintenance. There has to be a proactive planning so that nothing goes down during any of the time, right? In terms of the lift maintenance or probably any of the hazardous things which are happening over there. So what happens here is, if you look at certain data which you're collecting for energy consumption, for various equipments which are working inside the buildings, the data gets collected and runs through the algorithms. It based on the past tenure of the equipments and the other thing and the warranties, etc. It starts to give you the proactive alert and notifications that this lift is due for maintenance. You should be taking care of it, otherwise there is a 97% probability of going down in next 2 weeks. So that kind of information which gets generated out of this technology is very, very useful to take the decisions beforehand, rather than going into a defensive mode and taking the action once it's down. And that's where this generative AI applications can be really, really helpful. And definitely, if you would like to go deep dive, I can go on and on, but yes, on a very high level. And then, continuously the ESG part of it, the sustainability part of monitoring the sustainable goals of the organization, the workplace where you're working on, how you can ensure that you're meeting those. And I'm sure from the government, every organization, especially in real estate, they have a very, very high pressure to meet these ESG scores while they are building, while they are creating more and more workplaces and the buildings across US, they have to start looking into this area and continuously monitor certain KPIs like water consumption, food consumption, energy consumption, safety equipments in workplace, and how congested it is, how flexible it is, and whatnot, and how green area inside those workplaces is being used or sustained at these workplaces, right? So I already talked about most of the details here. I just want to take a pause if there are any questions so far, and I hope I was able to explain a few of the things there. Yep, go ahead, please.
There's obviously, thousands and thousands of use cases where you could apply the technology.
Yes.
Are you seeing any one killer app that's emerged that is relevant to the people in this room that says, this is like a 9x use case that's like really super high value where people should focus?
Okay, great question. So if you look at industry, so there is a cross section between technology and industry. Now, if I look at the people sitting in the room, they're coming from various industries, right? So it all depends on when you're talking about the generalized technology of the 9x use cases, definitely the ChatGPT and the Bard APIs of the world are very, very handy. However, if you look at the industry-specific developments like loan generation or financial capitals or insurance, maybe the healthcare portion of it, right? Definitely it is going to be the service-based developments, because of the fact that the frameworks can be created, the large language models can be created. Ultimately, you'll have to spend time in training your data, right? You'll have to ask that model to train on your particular data, because most of the organizations are not going to send out their data outside, right? Not going to give it publicly. So that discussions and customizations at the industry level are going to be key in next 2 to 3 years, and that's where most of the organizations are investing. I'm sorry, can you give the mic, please?
I guess specifically, not just general, but those 3 top ones around workplace, occupancy, facility. Is there any killer app that you're seeing and killer experience where you see the application of AI in those 3 right there?
So if you look at some of the code.ai, then you have Asson. These are a few of the startups which are coming up, and they have pretty much exhaustive use cases which they have already covered using generative AI, and it's just a matter of looking at picking them up and using it. And there are open sources as well who are available. Like, for example, if you look at some of the APIs coming, I'm sorry to call out that jargon. So here's what happened is, not every organization is required to build their models from scratch. Okay? Why? Because one, it takes a lot of time. Second, it takes a lot of computing power to build these models, right? So what these startups and like Code.ai or Asson or Rapidio, which I talked about, what they've done is they have actually invested their time and effort in building the frameworks, and they say that, okay, go ahead and use it. Within 2 to 3 months, you can just train and start using it and scale it up for your organization, and that's how it's helping, right? So you'll have to choose that whether you want to go into that space or you want to be at the consumer end. Okay? Yeah, there was one question there.
Yes, thank you. So for context, I helped several clients implement generative AI into their workflow, and we're definitely finding some issues with hallucinations and confabulations.
Oh, yes.
For those who don't know, AI is well known for BSing for
Yeah.
that's the hallucination is the PC term for
And that's one of my topics
Okay.
in next slide.
So that we'll talk about that. But so, for example, if someone is mentioned by name, and given a task, that gets it wrong sometimes.
Yes.
And if you summarize the notes, sometimes the summaries are bad.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's a nice way
Absolutely.
of putting it.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not 100% sure that this technology is like anywhere beyond the alpha stage in terms of actually incorporating it into my clients' uses. Right now, what's happening is essentially we're testing it out, and the IT department is the main one using it because they know the problematic aspects of it, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we use it internally within the IT department? How do we experiment it? And how do we actually integrate it into our work and actually make it more helpful than harmful? And so I'm curious what you've been seeing with other folks, what they are doing, and where has it actually been not a problem in terms of the harmfulness, and where has it been really helpful? So I'm curious about it.
Sure. So here's your answer. Okay. So as you rightly talked about, so just those of you, just for the benefit, what we talked about is that if you look at ChatGPT, and I'm sure those who have used it know what's the problem there, right? Now, ChatGPT is being trained on the huge data which is publicly available, which is not certain times authenticated, and certain times we don't know the source of that data on which it is being trained. So that's where we have to start looking at the transparency of while we are building the data. And that's where at Wipro, by the way, we have a collaboration with IIT Delhi, where few of the PhD research professors are working on this typical problem to solve it at the industry level. And that's where we are not directly using only OpenAI APIs. And sorry for going in technical because I have to answer his question. So you look at, there are mix and match of open source large language models, and at the same time, we at Wipro, we have taken an initiative that, for example, it's not always important to use, limousine if you have to go just 5 miles, right? You can use a less fuel consumption vehicle to go if you have to go to 5 miles, and you can walk even, right? So similarly, it applies for that if I have to solve a simple algorithmic problem of demand forecasting or workplace planning, I can actually use smaller language models, which is like less number, say 7 billion parameters, right? For the matter, ChatGPT today, I think use somewhere around 175 billion parameters, which is like huge. The energy consumption is also huge. So you are not required to use ChatGPT for across all kind of solutions. So you have to really choose wisely that in the market there are smaller models available, medium model available, and the large models. Now, based on the number of parameters, the accuracy keeps changing. That means the more the number of parameters you're feeding into, the model learns on it, and the more the accuracy level. But then you also need to look at how critical life-saving decisions you're taking at that level, and what kind of accuracy works for your organization. Yeah. Yes, they do. Yes. Yep. Yes.
AWS and have them host it, or
Yeah.
Wipro host it, or what?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have a gold partnership with all the major hyperscalers, as well as we are also partnering with the Databricks, Snowflake kind of the world, and we analyze that what best suits for our clients. So AWS, Microsoft, Google, IBM, Databricks, Snowflakes, all of these have, and just yesterday we received the Partner of the Year award with Databricks. And in fact, GCP, Google is one of they have chosen Wipro as one of the first partners to test their BARD APIs. So we are the one who are doing the beta testing for them before it comes out of the market. We are working on their AI labs to ensure that the models which are coming out are consumable. They do not carry all these kind of risks and challenges, because now we have started putting down these guardrails for the industry. And that's where Wipro is taking the lead, that being an ethical company, if we want to become an AI first company, we first have to take care of these kind of challenges and ensure that the legal biases, many of the places the data is not available, the biasness in the decisions and the outcomes, and certain times you said that it's hilarious. Why? Because it's not trained on that part of the data. It doesn't know how to respond, right? It can easily come and say that, you know what, I have not been trained on this kind of a data, I don't know. But it has to give you some answers. It just go and pick up any kind of a crap and give it to you, right? So that's where it's very important to look at these areas. And why I'm bringing this up is that at one hand, technology looks very fancy. It looks like a magic wand. It can do anything, but at the same time, when you're starting to work on it, it's very, very important to pay attention to these best practices and how to approach them, right? So at Wipro, what we did is we took an initiative an year back, almost even before this ChatGPT came became the overnight star, right? We were working on defining these best practices, while anybody is developing these generative AI solutions, and we are helping our clients to keep them very transparent while we're building these solutions for them, so that the explainability, the understanding of where the data comes in, and for the matter, there are many clients who may not be on the cloud. Our solutions have to be agnostic of platform so that it's easier for the clients to adopt. And we are not enforcing to adopt any of the cloud platforms. Without that, it will not work. No, and the answer is that very much you can have your own data centers for the data and privacy aspects, and there are on-premise solutions as well available. It's just that cloud platforms have their own big advantages, and you will have to invest in them for long term, right? So at the same time, I would just like to quickly talk about the responsible AI portion, which recently many of the large companies, and in fact in the Davos Summit, this was one of the big topics which came out, talking about that while we are applying artificial intelligence to automating these areas, and absolutely this is unavoidable. See, in next 6 months to 1 year, you're going to see, and based on the surveys which are being done by Gartner, Forrester, Everest, more than 73% of the companies are going to adopt AI in one or the other way to optimize their workforce, their cost, as well as their workplace efficiency. So it's very important to look at, we are building the responsible solutions in AI, and that framework have to be in place while we are defining these solutions, right? And I just wanted to talk about what has been the area of focus for last two and a half years. And in fact, I'm glad that Thomas Curran, in I think 3 weeks back, there was a Google Summit in Google Next office in Sunnyvale. He called out proudly that Wipro is one of the early adopters who have set up the Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence to develop the responsible, ethical, and transparent solutions, and not, because ultimately your clients are going to go into big penalty suits if these things go wrong. So definitely these are certain things which we are working into, and you can't avoid at the same time, right? You have to go for it. So at the same, we have been looking into ranging from industries of enterprise knowledge miners, which falls in that summary generation and content generation for your important pointers. At the same time, content management of, like, large organizations have a huge amount of learning data, the knowledge base. How would we curate that knowledge base and reduce the dependency from the people leaving, iterations, and all of that at the workplace, and ensure that that knowledge is captured and preserved within the organization, because you are seeing a very high percentage of iterations. The knowledge drain keeps happening with all of these movements, right? So that's where you can continuously look at the AI technology to preserve that data, curate that data, and then process that data in the form of conversational AIs and use that for decision making. Very interesting aspect. So there's a question. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yep. Yes. Yes. Excellent question. So there's something called as intelligent document processing. Okay, so that's part of artificial intelligence. What you do is you can continue to feed the conversational chatbot to the reports, to the company's financial annual reports. Then there is KPIs which gets generated across business units, even including unstructured data which goes into mails. The mail conversations are happening. You're talking about the targets for the quarter, or how any of the particular region is doing in the business, where the business is coming from. So all of that, you need to decide that what kind of information you want to feed into, so that once it starts taking that, it parses thousands and thousands of documents, processes unstructured and structured data, feeds on it, train itself. Now, when you have to ask questions, it actually processes within no time and gives you the answers. Now, we can go one level next, talking about that. Okay, you can define the boundaries to it, saying that, okay, I can only give you the financial data, I can only give you the HR data, or I can only give you the iteration related data. So all of that depends in terms of, but very much doable. And in fact, 2 of our clients, we have actually done a similar use case which you're talking about. Yeah, sure, go ahead, please.
Kyrie
hi,
Tan,
Kyrie.
Director of Innovation for the Swig Company. So we're working on a proof of value currently with the investments team, looking at asset acquisitions. And one of the things, that getting back to your point, your slide where you're showing best practices, this is more of a comment than a question. I would add, just in addition to training the machine learning model, you also need to train the folks that are going to be using it and how to actually frame the questions. Because as we're testing it out, we're discovering right away that you can't really it's not really conversational in the context of how you and I speak, normally.
Yes, absolutely.
That you really have to ask the question a certain way to get the information back that is truly relevant to to the use case. So I just wanted to note that that's also among the best practices that that I would see as well.
Absolutely. So Kyrie, to answer that question, so if you look at the typical chatbots, the way conventionally they used to answer your questions in yes, no, or you have a format in which you have to ask the questions. The technology has taken a leap and bounce from there. There is one of the partners, Context and Volup.io. We are discussing with them on the contact center discussions around contextual conversations. Now, what is the contextual conversation is, for example, I'm the end customer and I have a query around my copay. So I just go there, okay, I would like to know my copay from this payer. So it goes and tells you that, okay, you have this much amount of a copay confirmed from the payer. I said, okay, but that's too high. Will this cover my dental coverage in this? So it again goes back and gives you the answer. Now it says that no, I think that this plan is not going to work for me. I'm not liking it. Now, I would be really happy to showcase that demo to you. The moment that conversation is happening, there is a NPS score at the back end, which is shown to the chatbot that the conversation is not going into the positive direction and your NPS is going down because the customer is not happy. It actually automatically pulls out the parallel options of the different plans, and the conversation goes and okay, by the way, you can actually change to plan XYZ, which will be more cost effective and it will give you more coverage. Now, when you say that dental coverage, I'm also looking at to do my plastic surgery. Is where does it covers? It actually starts giving you the list of, based on the customer's address or the location where it is registered, it starts giving you the list of hospitals who are covering the plastic surgeries against that co-payer. So that kind of a level of contact center discussions we are at today, the technology. However, again, I would say that if you look at the data which goes into training, it actually connects to the multiple downstream systems where the data has to be available. The first layer of automation has to be in place where the data from the payer, the data from the subscriber, the data from the hospitals and other places has to be available from those downstreams for this level of conversation. And that's where I'm saying it's not the technology to blame, it is the level of maturity at the organization is currently sitting at. And I really would like to say, being very, very transparent, that see, you would like to implement AI, then you have to do the base work completely. The companies which says that no, we implement AI and then go away, that's where the quality of the conversation you see, where you're saying that it doesn't give you the satisfactory answers because it has not been trained on the right set of the data and not all the downstreams are connected properly. So what we do is we always run 6 to 8 weeks of engagement to currently look at the maturity of the organization, where the gaps are, and what kind of data is being captured at the moment, so that you flush out, complete that maturity level first before you go ahead and implement the holistic solution of chatbot or the conversation layer. And that's how we go, because it's the journey as a partner. It's not something that we just create something, dump on you, and then go away, right? That will not help, because it will not give you a seamless experience. So the last one in terms of, in addition to our various other research work, in fact, we have partnered with NVIDIA, who is the largest platform providers. They have set up a huge AI lab for us to build the industry level solutions proactively, and in partner we are taking these solutions to the market, and same as with the other hyperscalers we are currently doing. But then this is a long journey, and definitely we are looking forward for great collaboration here in terms of taking you to the next level. So with that, I'll just take pause if there are any further questions.
Aishwarya, we're going to hold on questions because we're over time. So
Okay, great. I hope nobody slept during the discussion. Thank you so much for having me and hearing me out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Aishwarya.